Well, good afternoon, everybody. This is your boy D Max. So let's talk. All right. So what I want to focus on right now is the Jelani Day autopsy. Now, if you're not familiar with who Jelani Day is, Jelani Day is a young black male who was recently he was missing, and his body turned up in the river. And when they went to do the autopsy, there were no organs at all in the body. It was just a hollow shell. Now, the body sat in the morgue for 24 days. And even though they had already identified the body, the family was not, the family wasn't notified for, I believe, about another few days or so. Um, but let's talk about these missing organs because there's another case that is very similar to this, and the young man's name was oh man, what was it? Juwan Jackson or Derek something Jackson. Forgive me for not remembering the name. I just looked at it not too long ago, and it was the same deal. He was wrapped up in a wrestling mat in the school gym, and his organs were missing. His body was stuffed with newspaper. So even in this climate where we're dealing with the pandemic and people are having arguments and fights um over being vaccinated and not vaccinated and the safety and all of these things, we still have people who are organ harvesting. And so these organs are going to someone. And so are people not worried about these organs being coming from a body that has contracted the coronavirus and is spreading it through that method as well? Um, I'm not really understanding this because it doesn't make sense in what they're trying to say to us. These things are not going together to me. Maybe I'm just thinking too much in it. Maybe I'm being over analytical. Maybe. But at the same time, I still have the question of why would you even risk that, not knowing who's carrying the COVID? Um, And why are we not really doing a deeper investigation into who's receiving these organs? This is the question. This is what the focus needs to be on. Who's recently getting transplants that they were not originally in line for? Who's receiving? Where are these off market body parts going? Because I'm pretty sure they're not going on any hospital listings, and they're not being tracked in any ways like that. So if you can track those parts and where they're going and the recipients of those parts, then you can get some answers. And I'm pretty sure that that lies within high society because there's nobody in my pay bracket that can afford to pay for a off market organ to make their life expand or what they think is an extended of their life. So we have to then put the high society on the spotlight because they're the ones who are benefiting from these black market body parts. We've seen the movie before, Get Out, and they were basically auctioning off this man's body parts and had the living specimen there for everybody to witness. And in a sense, that's what is taking place. I don't know if that's one of the messages or the undertones that Jordan Peele really wanted to put out there is the whole organ harvesting theory, but that's exactly what is taking place. These young and it's young black men that are being found like this. I also recall there was a young black scientist in Georgia right before the whole COVID thing broke out, and he was actually a virologist. Is that how you pronounce it? The scientist who works with the CDC on viruses and pandemics and stuff, and he was found face down in a river as well. I don't know if his organs were removed or anything, but it was something that was not solved. They had no ideas what happened or anything like that, and I just find this to be starting to become a pattern with these black men who are found and they don't have any organs and their bodies have been hollowed out. Now this goes back to something else I was speaking about as far as people feeling emboldened to go out and snatch children and other people alike that they deem as a weaker specimen that they can overpower to be able to do what they want to do. And a lot of times that ends up being women and children, but sometimes that will also be vulnerable men as well. And so um, when we look at these types of deaths and we see the inconsistencies of the federal agencies that are involved, a lot of the times they are made to look like mistakes and incompetency, but that's just a cover up for the true intention. And so they can always get by with, well, heads are going to roll because this should have never taken place. And I don't know how this slipped through the cracks and all of those things that they would use to. It's a manipulation tactic. I'm going to go ahead and just, if you don't know, now you know type of deal. It's a manipulation tactic. I will feign ignorance in order for you to show mercy on me, in order to cover up what my true intention was. And my true intention then proceeds to do what it set out to do because you gave me the benefit of the doubt for not being smart or being ignorant. It's one of the oldest tricks in the book. It's like that movie, Usual Suspect. And yeah, it's probably a bad one to use, but because it had Kevin Spacey in it. But one of the greatest roles, Kaiser Soze was the one that they would least expect because of the way he played himself to be so harmless and so useless. And so they gave him the benefit of the doubt, and let Kaiser Soze walk away. And this is what is done all the time. And this is how they get away with the intentional things that they do. They'll feign ignorance. And so, you know, this life that we're living in is a really crazy world. There are a lot of dark things out here that people are indulging in, and we have to face the reality of that. There's no longer time for us to sit back and act like these things are not taking place. Just because you're not looking at it doesn't mean that it's not taking place and it's not happening. And we have so many people out here who call themselves social justice warriors, but where is the social justice? And they're only fighting for one specific group when we were supposed to be fighting for human beings, period. Not just this group of human beings. All human beings should have human rights, period. But we have our select causes and our select outrage, and we're going to go through all of these different methods of dividing ourselves off into these subsectors. And, this is the way our society is leaning right now. So you can't really call yourself a social justice warrior if you're not willing to be brutally honest. And being brutally honest means that you're going to have to not show any partiality to any specific group. injustice is injustice. So even if the groups that you oppose are being done unjustly, you're supposed to feel some type of way about that as well, because that's injustice, right? See, we have this, we will make up our own definitions for things and we will cement that in our mind as that being the reality of what that means. And we'll operate in it as such. And then when someone comes along and says that's not even what that means, and now we're going to have to argue with this person because our pride is not going to allow us to say that we were mistaken. Um, but getting back to point, this young man, um, Mr. Day, his family, they're not a family of means. They don't have a lot, so they can't afford the big time investigators and all of the resources that it would be necessary to really get to the bottom of what happened to this young man, because there's forensics and all types of things that can be utilized to tell a story of what happened, but they do not have the resources, nor do they have the people involved on this case that will allow them that closure. And so when you have these public entities and offices working together to cover up what took place for whatever their reasons, maybe they're involved or maybe they just don't want to be seen um, as they are in this situation. But whatever the case may be, this family's not going to get any closure, and that's just going to leave a gaping wound, and who knows what that's going to produce. Anytime you plant a seed, it's going to produce something. Something's going to grow out of it. So what's going to grow out of this seed that's been planted? Anytime people have been done wrong by those in authority over them, they most likely ended up joining something to oppose that force that did them so wrong. This is where groups like Al Qaeda and groups like ISIS and groups like the Taliban have been produced out of. A lot of these groups are people who, when we went in over there and we showed such animosity and such inhumane treatment of people, that produced a whole nother group of people against us. And this is what we're seeing across the world. This is what we're seeing in our government. This is what we saw on January the 6th. We saw a group of people that was produced out of what they felt was a necessity because of the incompetence that they were perceived going on in the government. So we're always going to see the fruits of the trees that's planted. Um, yeah, that's all I really have to say, man. My prayers go out to the Day family. Um, my prayers go out to everybody involved in this, man, and we need to definitely keep our focus on the things that are really important out here. Keep a focus on it. And when things happen, man, don't just stop at what somebody tell you. Especially if your spirit's saying that something's wrong and it's just not settling with you, because the spirit leads us and guides us in truth. So it's urging you for a reason. And keep going until you find that truth, man. This is your boy D Mac. Y'all know what I say, man. Sticks and stones can break your bones, but the word can always heal you. I'm out.